Honorable Suresh Prabhu sir has been one of the most iconic CAs of our country. He was formerly the Minister of Railways, Minister of Commerce and Industry, and Civil Aviation. From merging the railway budget into the main union budget to building several Wi-Fi routers in Indian railway stations, his work and contribution towards the Indian economy is immeasurable. His credentials propelled him to become the top three leaders by Asia Week magazine in its lead story Giant on the Move. Well, it gives me an immense pleasure to release this episode on his 68th birthday, that is today, 11th of July, and wishing him a very happy birthday on behalf of the entire CA fraternity. So enjoy yourselves in this podcast where we have discussed about the startup community and some general advice for all the young professionals. Initially, I had asked for 20 minutes, but it was so interesting that we ended up recording the conversation for 45 minutes. So here you go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the series named Conversation with Kushal once again. Today's guest is one of the highly acclaimed CAs of India. From dreaming of speaking in foreign countries during his teenage to actually speaking in more than 100 countries in the world, he has made the entire nation proud through his work and accolades. He's India's Sherpa in the G7 and G20. He's none other than Honorable Suresh Prabhu, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for enabling time for this interview. It means a great deal to me and my viewers. Having an acclaimed personality like you fills me with joy and gives me a sense of massive honor.
It's an honor for me. It's a real pleasure for me that I'm going to be talking through you, talking with you, but also that will be related to so many other fellow chartered accountants and aspiring chartered accountants. So I really feel it's a great honor for me. Really thankful to you for giving me the opportunity. I'm not as bright as you are, but I'm very lucky to be a part of the process. Thank you.
So that's your modesty. So it's a huge privilege for hearing these words from you. Everyone has a turning point in their lives. So, like there's a turning point which they'll remember, which changes them as a person, which changes their perspective towards life. So, what was your turning point in life that changed your entire perspective towards looking life in general?
When I lost my father, probably that was a different turning point because till then I was quite well protected emotionally, physically as well. And when I lost him when I was 30, and then I was not married, nor my sisters were married, two younger sisters. My mother was, I'm the only son of my parents, so my mother was alone, and that was probably a different way. When first day when I learned about it, I couldn't cry because of I had a responsibility. Suddenly I realized that everybody, my sisters, my mother, and my relatives are looking up to me. So then one day when there was no one around, I locked myself into a room and cried a lot. And that I realized that, oh, now I am all alone. I have a different responsibility. Maybe that was one turning point. Then you can say when I met my guru, that was a little earlier, that again was a big turning point for me because he gave me a completely different perspective toward life. And in fact, when it's very interesting, I'm probably telling you for the first time. Actually, when I lost my father, he was with my sister. He had traveled to my sister, and I was going to meet my guru in for a Guru Purnima in Gurgaon, near Delhi. And when I left, my father, very strange, he took me, embraced me, but not very, because I used to always be with him, but it was very rare gesture of his. I don't know why he did that. Then I left and came to my guru. That was for Guru Purnima. And in fact, I didn't know those were not the days of mobile phones and the information used to travel instantly. It was not those days. So somebody had informed my family in Mumbai. And then my friend who was in Mumbai, but also he was also having the same connection with my guru. He probably relayed the news to him, and I was doing some seva. So he called me and broke the news to me, and he told me interestingly that what is your worry? I said no worry. But then he told me, don't worry, I am your father. So I don't know why. I was also thinking why he's telling me like this. But then he told me, your father is not well, you go back. I said, I cannot go because of Guru Purnima next 2 days. He said, no, you go. So meeting my guru, year and a half before I lost my father, was probably another turning point. And like that, but with that, I would call it my this very important uh, perspective wise. From you asked me about a perspective.
Right.
My guru provided me a different perspective toward life, and losing my father provided me a completely different perspective towards my own status in life. When you don't have that protection, you don't have now I'm on my own. So this one was providing umbrella support when I met my guru, and
Right.
one was losing a parental support that probably.
Right. Yeah, so absolutely. So it's very important to have that mental support and have that constant guidance of a mentor. So a mentor is a person who does not teaches us what to think, but how to think. So that's a very important phase that we all should have mentors or gurus, as you pointed out. So in an interview with your story, so I was also hearing you had said in that interview that you still get dreams that you have your CA exam tomorrow and you have to give your exam the next day after qualifying it as well. And I also know that you have qualified your CA exams when the result was only 1%. So having qualified as a chartered accountant, we all know what is the pain that has been undergone, what is the struggle that has been gone behind clearing that exam. So what is that one memorable experience or maybe one thing which like you have experienced throughout the CA journey that you have always cherished over the rest of your lifetime?
One is, I must really tell you that we should be really proud to be chartered accountant.
Right.
And when, again, I decided to be a chartered accountant thanks to my father, because he was keen that I should be a chartered accountant, but I was personally interested to be a lawyer. But that's a different story. But as a chartered accountant, the whole process which qualifies you to be a chartered accountant itself is quite tried and testing. Also, it's very useful because the articleship that we used to do those days for 3 long years with hardly any stipend, 60 rupees, was very, very tough though, but also very educative. Practical experience you gained even before you qualified. So that medical doctors, they have to do internship, the housemanship, but they do it after they qualified. We had to actually rigorously do it for 3 years, 15 hours, 16 hours, 8, 9, 10 hours for sure. And that's a very interesting one. That was one part. Secondly, the examination. You gave me that, you reminded me about that. I'm really telling you, I never done anything as tough as C exam. Never. My real life exams were tougher. When you are into some ministerial responsibility, you are doing something challenging, but this is nowhere compared to the examination of the chartered accountant. And where even if you normally in some states copying is a norm for examination, in CA if you want to copy then you'll definitely fail because you'll lose your time. Because
Right.
the questions were even if you're given book and say now you copy, and you cannot do that because the questions were set. I don't know who does it or those days who used to do it. They're so probing, so tough, so challenging, so questioning to yourself. So your mental energy was sapped. You so big. So that's how you used to lose. Used to feel tired because one thing is very interesting. In your day-to-day life, every day you lose a lot of energy, even if you don't do anything. So it's called normal. Your metabolism uses that energy because to run that metabolism. So, which is that organ of your body which uses the maximum energy? It's a brain. So the metabolism, that your resting energy, as they call it is that energy, maximum energy used by a little bit like brain. So that shows in CA exam, you're using that the most. You're not
Right.
using your hand and legs or any other organ more than your brain. And that's why you're completely tired. So you should be proud when you actually become chartered accountant.
Right.
You earned it. You got it out of your hard work, using your intelligence, the brain, and you really uh, deserved it to be a chartered accountant when you become one. I
Right.
have not heard I don't know, but I never heard, and at least during my time, I never could even think of that there was any manipulation in the examination. So when you become chartered accountant, you earned it, really, literally.
Right.
It's not because you had connection, you had money or something else that you could become chartered
Absolutely.
accountant. It's not possible.
Right. And plus an icing on the cake, you secured All India rank 11 in your inter CA examinations. So kudos to you for that as well. There are a lot of people who rely on young chartered accountants and even on the entire CA community. So we audit their books of accounts. We also file their income tax returns. We ask them to pay taxes to the government. So asking you on the contribution aspect, how can we, all the young professionals who are watching this video, contribute to the nation building of the economy?
No, this is a very interesting issue. One is individually, and one is as a collective body. So let me come to the collective body first, because that's something which is very easy to know. I feel that as the chartered accountants, plus the young aspiring CAs, together there are something like 14 lakhs, I think, the students as well as the
Yeah.
membership put together. It's a very large number. So if you can really look at it, that you should, and an institute, very well structured institute. It has the central council, there's a regional council, there are branches, and there are study circles. So it's quite grassroots that way. And so if you really look at it, you should try to, state by state, this is what my own thing I keep saying. We take some issues in very relevant to a state and to nation at a national level. And collectively, the central councils and the regional councils and the branches and as well as study circle, they could pull their resources together intellectually and try to offer well thought of ideas about the issues that country is facing. I'm not saying only related to that, that we always do the research publications, talk about taxation issues, audit issues, they do that. I'm talking about broader national issues. For example, see, one important challenge today for everybody is to create jobs. Very big problem. This is not just a problem in India, but globally because of this
Right.
fourth industrial revolution. We realize that new jobs will be probably displaced than created because of the huge infusion of technology. In that sense, you cannot prevent technology. You should not. You can do that to your own peril. So you must get technology. That means you are actually accepting that job losses will be there. So where do you create new jobs? It's a big, big challenge. And I think if the chartered accountants together, because they have the hands-on experience on
Right.
economic issues, they know the business very well. They work with the business. Like a chartered accountant, I always say, and I experienced because I was a practicing chartered accountant, is like a family doctor. A family doctor, though the institution is no longer growing, but family doctor is the one who you can go to him. He knows everything about you. He knows about your ancestry. You know about your brother, sister, your everything. So he will tell you when you go there, "Oh, I got a stomach pain." So he'll examine you, but he knows why it must be. So it must be the reason that your parents had this, something like that. So your sibling is having this problem, something like that. So he knows everything. So chartered accountant knows a business so well, and a businessman so well. Not just business, but businessman, the person behind the business. So
Right.
he can actually advise. So I personally feel as an institution we should do that. Then as individual chartered accountant, I now feel that individually, particularly those who are in practice, because there are a large number of people now in industry like you, who are no longer practicing but are contributing even in their own way. So those who are in industry, they contribute, they will of course doing it. But as chartered accountants in practice, I think they should be a complete business advisor to the business, not just because sometimes when you are a tax practitioner or you are doing auditing, your client feels that you are a burden on him because he has to pay you money because compliance is required. It is not that he's happy. But suppose you change your role and try to be a business advisor to him, to tell him that how can his profits increase, not by evading taxes, How can his tax profit increase by diversifying into new business or trying to expand his business in a particular way? I think that will he'll say, oh, he's adding value to me. So he'll be your role changes. It's no longer a compliance related role.
Right.
And that's why statutorily you are required to be paying you. But now he'll be feeling, oh, I must give you this because thanks to you, you have done it. And chartered accountants are equipped to do this. But they are
Right.
not using that particular aspect of their expertise because that most of the time must be going into dealing with compliance related auditing, certification, taxation. So I think you should think like that.
Absolutely. So having a consultant's perspective will help solve this problem. So you are an advisor to the client and not like for a compliance purpose. So that is going to help in order to contribute towards the nation. Absolutely, sir. You've been a political leader and you've also taken multiple leadership roles in your life. And you have a lot of responsibilities as well to fulfill a lot of citizens' expectations. Nowadays, what happens is that if a young person who is joining an organization, if he's given some huge responsibility, usually he's reluctant or he's hesitant to take that responsibility, thinking that if he does something wrong or if he messes up on that particular thing, it might create a negative impact. Let's take a simple example. If a person is asked to present a deck to the senior management of that company, he'll feel like, what if I do something wrong, or what if they ask me and I'm not able to answer that? So he'll try to postpone that thing. So this is a thing which we should avoid, I feel. So my question to you is, what is the importance of taking responsibilities in a person's life, and how can one person overcome the fear of taking responsibilities?
It's like typically because we are a nation which loves cricket. So let's take an example of cricket. If you enter the match that I must draw the match, so that's the best way to avoid defeat. If you draw the match, then you are never losing a match. So at least that's the best case scenario you want to get out of as a result. If you start match like that, then you'll never win the match because you're already playing a defensive game. So you'll never win the match. So same thing in our own life and responsibility. See, if you don't take responsibility, you never succeed. And if you never succeed, you never grow because you'll always try to be defensive, as you said. You want to avoid responsibility so that you are avoiding possible failure. That's the only way. So you are trying to draw the match. So you are trying to play safe. That I am an average person. He has never lost. There is no proof that he has lost because he never got into that territory where he could have lose. But he is an average person. That's the stamp he'll always carry because he never succeeded. There's nothing on his career path that you can show as a successful outcome. So I feel, let's take because you gave my example. I have traveled a long way. One was I was a practicing chartered accountant. Then I was also a banker. I used to be chairman of the largest cooperative bank at a very young age. Every time I took responsibility, I could have avoided it because there were a lot of responsibility attached to every job that I was handling. Then I became politics minister, and then I used to go globally, and I've spoken on, as you yourself mentioned earlier, so many subjects. I never prepared a speech. So that's a failure possibility, that you are addressing the most discerning, intelligent audience in the world. I really mean it. I address audiences more or less all the time of that level. And they're experts in their respective field. And I'm going there and speaking on their subject in which they have the domain knowledge. So I'll fail. Then I will never be able to deliver a speech. I used to always say, at first I'll plead to them and say, I don't know much, but I'm going to give a perspective. So I'm admitting that I'm not your kind, not your level. You have been, like, for example, I'm giving a speech on biochemistry. I've done that. So I'm not obviously a biochemist. How can I give a speech like that? Or in pharmaceutical, because I was a minister here in that area. But first, I used to tell them that this is my risk factor. I don't know much about this, but I'm giving every time, so as a speaker or as handling responsibility in the government or in the cooperative sector, which I was there, or as a charter. Every time this was a challenge. When I became chartered accountant practicing, there were times when client used to ask me, are you aware of something like handling that those days related to foreign collaboration, etc.? I said, yes, I know. Though I didn't know, because as a young chartered accountant, how would I know? I don't have a practice, because I immediately started a practice. I never went for a job or never worked under anybody. This is one thing, I never been an employee anytime. except employee of the people in the government. You're employed by the government, people of India. So I can tell you, don't shirk responsibilities. Prepare for your job with confidence. And it's still possible that you prepare with best of abilities. You can still not live up to that expectation. But that doesn't mean that then you are losing a possibility of not getting it. See, this is always a challenge in life. That success, you never know. But that's only an afterthought, an after event that happens once the activity starts. And what is success also changes with passage of time. Somebody might tell you today, oh, you failed because you did something like this. But after some time, people say, oh, that was a fantastic decision this person took. So maybe after some time, they'll realize your importance of UOD. But you will know what you are doing is right or wrong. So you should do your right.
Right.
In fact, my philosophy has been do your best and forget the rest. Do your best. So I don't think you should shirk responsibility at all. In fact, if you don't try, that's the biggest failure you are doing. And if you try, the outcome will be measured by somebody in the short period, probably. That is a failure. But if you look at a long-term career of yours, people will say, oh, this man has that ability. He goes and pushes himself to the limit and tries to do this. So over a long period of time, the reason why people fired you, maybe possible, from one job, fired because you failed, could be the reason when ultimately you will become successful. Because somebody who has that perspective will say, why, what happened? Why you were fired from the job? He said, because I went and took this risk and took this decision. He said, oh, you have that ability. You're a risk taker. You want to push yourself. Because then he will say, but that was not your fault. That particular, what is attributed to you as a failure was not your fault. It was organizational failure. Why you should be blamed for it? So, like that perspective will happen. But don't shirk responsibilities. Push
Right.
push yourself. Follow it.
Right, that's a wonderful answer. And if you take responsibilities, then only opportunities are going to come your way, and then only you can grab those opportunities.
Absolutely.
So wonderful, sir. So a lot of people are increasingly inclining towards taking a public career, like be it like government service or be it a politician. So what would be your advice to those in terms of the most important factor to be considered before taking such a decision, and what encouraged you to serve the entire public through the temple of democracy?
This actually, it stems out of one's personal beliefs and your goals. I feel you should not do something which because somebody else had done it. That's a wrong thing, wrong decision you're making, because then you'll never be happy. Because somebody else had done it, you don't know why he did it, what was his internal abilities to deal with the situation, you don't know. Because what is actually a person is what you see a person is not a real person. What you see a person is by what he wears, whether he wears glasses or sunglasses, what watches. That's not a person. The person is inside. What he is a person that you can never see. So you go by outside appearance. So he's tall, he's short, he's put on weight, or he's slim. That's a judgment you make. And therefore, whether he's fit for a job or not, you'll decide on that. Then what he has studied. So because the known traits, person is not known or should not be judged by what you see him from outside, but what he's inside that you don't know. So I normally don't give advice, but I'm just giving perspective. My perspective on this would be that do something when you are yourself interested in doing it. Don't try to emulate somebody else. Don't try to copy somebody else. If you're interested in doing public service, get into it if you want to do it. But you should be clear why you want to do it. What is the reason why you want to do it? Because public service is fraught with a lot of issues. You are always, and you have to do something which is so difficult in normal situation. So, but you have reconciled to do that, you are willing to do that for a bigger cause, for a better reason, fine. You do it. And don't regret it. Having got into a particular position, then first think quite a lot before getting into it. Having got into it, then you are neither here nor there. Na ghar ka na ghat ka, jaisa kehte hain. It should not be like that. So get into it with full thinking, because you have, as I said, the goals as well as your own attributes, your own beliefs. And having done that, then pursue it vigorously. There could be temporary challenges. Don't worry about them. Just push, fight for what you feel is right. That's one thing I would feel you should do.
Right, absolutely. Again, that's a very insightful answer. So, in one of your talks, also you had like stated the importance of startups, right? Like the Indian economy is also very much dependent on the growth of startups, and startups are also one of the major drivers towards the growth of the Indian economy. Like they are the job creators after all. So, what are some of the promising sectors in this startup phase, which will like tell out to all the entrepreneurs who want to venture and who want to start something of their own?
See, this what is a promising sector will change from time to time.
Right.
Because, but I can tell you immediate one, which in my opinion is the best one, is in healthcare. See,
Okay.
basically, as a startup, there are two, three elements to it. One is the idea. Second is fixing that idea with the present situation. But more importantly, the most importantly, is somebody must buy into that idea. There should be either investor who is willing to say that I'm providing you the seed capital or the growth capital. Somebody is going to say, okay, I'm willing to buy you. So ultimately, startups make money. Few make money by running it, but most make money by selling it. They get acquired by some bigger companies and they get good capital. So somebody has to buy into your idea by willing to invest. So that part will depend upon the market and everything else. So today's flavor of the season is healthcare. And there are very key elements to healthcare. Healthcare is not just medication, that's not pharmaceutical. Healthcare is not just medical equipment. Healthcare is not just medicines and doctors and healthcare workers, but much more than all of that. Like today, technology is playing a key role into healthcare. So, like even when you talk about measuring that, this time we suddenly realized nobody was knowing about measuring your sugar, the oxygen, whether oxygen saturation. So you have to need oximeter. So never, I didn't know there's something like oximeter which is necessary because in my life I never used it. So something technology into healthcare in terms of dispensing services or all aspects of that, including maintenance of record. For example, a pharma company which is going to develop a new molecule, you need a lot of records. So if you think about brilliant ways of doing it. So startups in healthcare sector in the next, so this is immediate opportunity. And I think we should look at immediate because startups do not look at 20 years later on what is going to happen. They will not survive. So I think healthcare is a big opportunity for the next at least foreseeable future.
Right.
Because the pandemic has shaken our old thinking. We were thinking globally that public health is not anybody's responsibility. This can be taken care of by somebody or the other. So nobody's responsibility is just not to be done anything about it. But that's not a situation today. The most developed countries in the world have shaken up from their own old thinking. US, entire OECD countries. So it's a great opportunity for you. The global market will be available if you think about some good idea. And that should be niche ideas. See, startups should only work on niche ideas, not generic ideas. Then there is just too many people getting into that. Think about a niche idea. That's very important for a startup. That may be because the scaling up happens as you go along. But initial idea should be completely niche idea, which nobody else had thought about before. At least that's the reason why you will succeed. So I think in that area, and that you don't have to be a doctor to be thinking like this. See, as I told you, everybody is a user of medical services. So from a consumer perspective or the user perspective, you know what would sell in the market, right? So therefore, then how to develop it? See, a molecule development, etc. You have to be a completely different league. So startup need not get into that. But all these ancillary areas related to healthcare, all these peripheral areas related to healthcare, all this ecosystem of healthcare, if you can find a niche area into that and invest and develop a product, it will be a huge success. And then again, this is one area in which both key elements of economy will be dominant. One is manufacturing and secondly services. Both will be dominating because you need to manufacture medical equipment, for example. But it's also service business because you have to deliver service. So both will be prevalent in that.
Right. So healthcare plus technology, I think you're talking about the medtech sector, to put it differently. So that like those companies who are in the medtech sector, they are going to be very promising in the near future. So just a follow-up question on the startup phase itself. I also heard one of your TEDx talks in November 2020 where you pointed about the alarming situation of climate change. So you had said that like it is an existential issue and there's no vaccine for climate change as well. So do you think like this is an opportunity for like some of the startups or maybe businesses to contribute to the nation and save the economy?
You know, you asked me a very sensitive question because I have a very different perspective as well as my whole life revolves around climate change issue. Because I will tell you something. So one is talked about opportunity in business, but other part is threat to business. All businesses will have to be climate proof. In fact, you don't realize how serious the problem is. Every passing year, and I think that way I'm lucky because I'm going to go much before you all are going to live much longer than me. So you will see in your next 30, 40 years, every passing year, you will see a more and more threat become reality from climate change. If you don't act, there's a possibility that you can postpone or you can even avoid the threat of climate change by acting on it today. But if you don't do it and business as usual, then we'll see more and more threats coming and becoming life-threatening. Now, so what you ask me is one, to make climate-proof today's businesses, there's a business opportunity. Then secondly, to create business model on what could be the alternative to the present business, which threatens the climate change, which causes the climate change. And that's particularly in the field of energy, transportation, agriculture also, because some part of agriculture also emits methane. So that's one problem. But so you first identify areas from which you can mitigate the greenhouse gases. And second aspect is called adaptation. Because when the climate change is a reality, and which is going to remain at least for 50 years because of the past historical emissions, even if you start all emissions today, the past historical emissions is going to cause climate change in the next foreseeable future. So adapting to climate change necessity because it is going to change, so you have to adapt to it. So there are opportunities in adaptation. What needs business solutions? So if you develop ideas for mitigation and adaptation, this will be a big thing globally. It's not just in India alone. It will be a global perspective. So these are the ideas which will have applicability on global scale. So you can imagine the huge potential coming out of it. But I studied climate change from a different perspective because I realized it's a life-threatening issue because I was Minister of Environment in 1998. That was my first exposure to climate change issues. Then I took it so seriously that I enrolled myself to do PhD in Germany, Freie University Berlin. I tried doing that. I not completed it. I got involved into again, became ministers and others. So I speak on it. My guides, they call it supervisors, they keep telling me that what you speak, if you write, you'll get your PhD. But that I have not been able to do. But I have studied that subject a little bit more than what normal people do. And therefore, I feel that this is a very, very important issue that we have to deal with as human beings. That's our responsibility because what right I got to snatch it away from you, my young friend, because I lived my life. Now I lived in most irresponsible way to cause so much of damage to you, the next generation, that you'll not be able to live it normally. So we have to correct it. So actually we had on 5th of June, the World Environment Day, and the theme is restoration of ecosystem. It's a very important issue because ecosystem is the one which gives you water, which gives you clean air, which gives you vegetation, which gives you rains, everything else. So if ecosystem is damaged, then everything is gone. So the theme is restoring it. because that's the right way to do, because at least what you have lost, you can repair it to some extent. So I think you'll have to work on this. So as a fellow citizen, first, as a responsibility to take care of the environment so that posterity doesn't suffer. And second, you can look at it as you come out with business solutions. It's good because that business solution avoids the risk of climate change. I think it's a good idea.
Right, absolutely. So we as citizens of India, like we need to ensure that we are like doing businesses which are environmentally friendly and which are like towards contributing towards the green economy. So yeah, thank you so much for that as well. So asking on a lighter note, sir. So what's your secret of staying fit and how do you ensure to maintain this fitness despite having such a busy and hectic schedule?
See, what I do is all key elements of keeping yourself healthy. One is what you eat. So if you look at what I eat, you'll be surprised. I eat very healthy habits. I take most of naturally, I'm a vegetarian, but I take most of it, very what is naturally available. I eat that. So one is eating. Second is I do meditation. I do yoga. I do pranayam separately. I walk a lot. And also I do a little bit of weight session. Then I always use, so this is one way I do it, but not always you get so much of time. So I use, for example, I never use a elevator or a lift. I keep climbing the stairs. So 4 or 5 stories I climb very easily. Because that's the natural way of doing it. So when I do work, I will keep walking it. So if you don't, so physical exercise, what you eat is very important because you are what you eat actually. So therefore that is very important. Third, mental fitness is very, very important. And that can come only through meditation. Because normally we live our life by looking at others. This person is worse, that person is even worse than the other one. So we always keep finding fault with everybody else. So we always live life looking outwards, and we never look inwards. So by looking outward, by pointing out fingers at others and uh, wasting your time in trying to find faults with others, you are not able to find any time to find your own self. And therefore, when you don't find your own self, how are you going to develop yourself? So that is a very important aspect, and that's the only way you can know what you are, by peeping into yourself. And the only way you can peep into yourself by doing meditation. So I think
Right.
this is a divine gift to the human beings, that you can do meditation, which really is so necessary. And it's nothing great about it. It's anybody can do it. It's a least cost job you can do. You don't have to join a gym. You don't have to have a teacher, nothing. You can do it yourself. And you can do it wherever you are at any time. So I think these are very important elements one must all practice, because there's an imbalance, because meditation is for mind. The physical fitness is comes from eating, as well as the physical fitness from exercise. So mind and body both have to be connected to each other, aligned to each other, with what really both are controlled by what? By soul. So if you don't bring everything together at the same time, you'll never be able to do it. See, like can you run a machine when everything is not aligned properly? It can never happen. So this human body machine, which again is designed by the creator with a particular purpose, with a particular methods. And therefore we are running the machine, not following the manual, which was given to you for maintenance and for running it. So if you don't follow the manual given to you by the manufacturer, how can you run? So machine will just be defunct. So if you go and complain to the manufacturer, you say, right, you never followed it. This is very well written. What you have to do? We don't have time to read it because we want to spend time in finding out faults with my young friend Kushal, with somebody else, and I don't have time to look into my own self. So you should do that.
Right. That's a very lovely answer. And in fact, I also saw your video on like scientific meditation last month. I think you were there for giving a talk of 10 minutes on scientific meditation as well, where you pointed out the importance of meditation. So that was also very insightful as well. So thank you so much, sir, for sparing your time. I just like to ask one last question to you. So it is often said that only 1% of people can succeed in their lives. So how do we maintain, or how do we position ourselves in the top tier of that 1% and maintain that graph of success?
I think you just keep doing your thing that gives you happiness, and your priority keep changing. In fact, I'll tell you something which you don't realize actually. You're not the same person when you are born. You keep becoming a different person every day. That's a law of nature. In fact, every fraction of a second, the new body is born actually, because there is so much of regeneration happens all the time. So when the only body doesn't change physically, this is also mentally. So you're actually a changing person. But many times you don't pay heed to the changes that are really happening within you. And then because you are all the time you are devoted to outside world. But therefore, I personally feel don't worry about success, don't worry about all these issues. You just do what you feel is right at particular point of time. I think that's one thing very, very important. Never compromise with your own self. You can compromise with your wife, compromise with your child, compromise with your boss, compromise with your employee, compromise with your colleagues, compromise with the rest of the world. But only person you should never compromise with is your own inner self. Then you will never ever be happy. So, there is very interesting thing. I just tell you this. This is not my own thinking. This was by one of a great spiritual leader. He said, what is integrity? Because we always give, you are so young, but we'll be giving certificate to people working under you. He possesses highest integrity. You'll give this thousands of certificates. I'm sure if I want to bet, I can bet on your own future. I can say you are going to be one of the most successful person. I can tell you just now. And I won't be there to experience it because I will be gone much before that. But you'll be a great successful person. So you'll be giving so many certificates because will be so many people work under you. What do you mean by integrity? You write like this. What is integrity? This is not my own definition. I told you a spiritual person. If you don't disintegrate at different times. So I want to present you as one person, to my wife separately, to my employee separately, to my separate. That means you are disintegrating. You play different roles. It's a different thing. So in different roles, sometimes you have to be tough with your child. Sometimes you will be loving with your child. That's fine. But as a person, you should not disintegrate. If you remain true to your own self, you are not disintegrating. And therefore, I was saying that don't compromise with your self, your own self. If you don't compromise, it doesn't matter to you whether you are into which percentage. You will not even worry about what percentages. The percentage is an exercise to be carried out by outsiders. But as far as you are concerned, you are only, if you want to call it as a success, only yardstick for success is that you are lived up to your own beliefs, your own system, which you designed for yourself. So didn't compromise with that. That's very important. I think you should always believe in yourself and try to never leave away your own value system, whatever happens.
Right. Wonderful, sir. That is going to be a motivation booster for everyone, to be honest. And thank you so much. Everyone considers you as a role model and a source of inspiration. So thank you so much for guiding and mentoring all of us. We look forward to become like you one day, and hope that even we are able to achieve a moderate level of success. So thank you so much for all your words of wisdom. And I am highly grateful to you for taking out your time for this interview. So thank you so much once again, and wish you all the best for all your future endeavors.
And I really mean it that it was a wonderful experience talking to you.
Thank
and
you,
always interacting with young, bright person like you is itself something rubs on me, thanks to you. So I really appreciate it. I congratulate all my young friends for being now pursuing this course of chartered accountancy. I can tell you, you are very fortunate because again, going by the percentage will be a fraction of percentage that people get this opportunity. So pursue it, do all well. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a huge privilege for me. Thank you.